everybody, and welcome to Epic Everyday, our weekday podcast for busy, stressed out Christians who don't want to just get through this moment, whatever this moment is for you, today, this week, next year, and who instead want to live in the now with zest and joy and abundance. I'm Liz Frerichs, and this is my husband, Evan.
Hi there.
And we're so glad you guys are here with us on this lovely Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks for joining us for Growth Mindset Week here on Epic Everyday.
Woohoo!
Like we said yesterday, it's something we're working on, we're learning about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. I've been watching a growth mindset video off of Class Dojo, I think it is.
Yeah, did we mention that yesterday?
I don't think we did.
I think we meant to.
But yeah, I've been watching one to start out school with the kids every day, and it's definitely a stretch.
Yeah.
It's a stretch for me.
Yeah. The kids seem into it like it's a cool little thing. And there's always this point in the video where they're like, you know, this other 7-year-old kid is like, well, scientists have found out.
Yes.
Oh, cool. But it's still really cool because scientists have found out all this stuff about how your brain can learn and grow.
Yeah, that's the essence of growth mindset, that we're not just stuck with where we are and who we are. We can keep growing and developing. Our brains can get smarter. We can create new neural pathways. We're not stuck.
Yeah, I always remember hearing growing up that you don't get any new brain cells, or like it just was this idea that you're just static. Like if you lose a brain cell because you do too many drugs or something, they're gone forever.
Too bad. So sad.
And it doesn't seem like the brain is, I mean, nothing else in your body is like that. I mean, you can't regrow a limb, I guess, or something, but everything else in your body can heal. Mm-hmm. And you know, not even just talking about injury, but like learning new skills. It's not even an injury. It's just a way to develop.
So since it's Tuesday, we are going to talk about surrender and growth mindset.
Yeah. This reminds me of something we talk about in recovery circles a lot, you know. So if we're wanting, like you said in the intro, like we're wanting some result of some kind that's not obtainable right now for some reason, right? Like we've got to grow to get the thing, whatever it is.
We just have to wait till next year.
I guess, yeah, or whatever. But I think we can get caught up in this thing where we're just like, well, I know what I need to do that. And so you do something and it doesn't work. I guess I'll do it again. You just keep banging your head against this brick wall because you're doing the same thing over and over again. But you're not obtaining the result you want. You're not really growing, because you're just doing the exact same. It's like, well, no, this is how you solve this problem. You take a hammer and you swing it down.
Right.
So it's just like, so that's not surrender, because that's my own understanding of like, well, this is how you solve this problem. And for some reason, being stuck there and not being willing to consider another option.
Yeah, I definitely get stuck in that where I'm like, okay, I mean, I've done the same thing over and over again. Where I'm like, okay, I just need to try harder today to make my schedule work. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it work. If I just try a little bit harder, that's the problem. Instead of going, oh, maybe it's my schedule that's the problem. Maybe it's, or how I'm doing it. Yeah. You know, instead of saying, oh, well, it's because I'm just not trying hard enough.
Well, right. And so then there's another trap there, I think, where it's like, well, if I just try really hard, the results will come. But it matters what we're trying to do, I think, is what we're learning, that you have to do the right thing to get the right result, not just do a whole bunch of really impressive stuff.
Yeah.
And that's hard sometimes, even though saying it out loud, it's like, well, yeah, you do this and then you get that, and you can't get this and get some other that, because why would that work? But
yeah,
but so we don't often see that, I think.
Right. Well, I think we get stuck in the immediacy of the problem.
Yeah.
At least I do. I'm just like, this problem feels awful. I need to fix it right now. What do I got to do?
Right. It takes some other perspective, I think. And that's another great way to use surrender. I mean, we're surrendering to God's idea of the way things are, not our own, but it's really difficult.
Yeah, I think there's a flexibility that comes when we can surrender to the Lord and say, what do you want me to do? Even when it's hard, there's still that I don't know, just room for that, room for making mistakes like we talked about yesterday.
But it's
Kind of
gotta,
what you're going to say?
it's got to start with that question, though. What do you want me to do? What am I
Right.
supposed to be doing here? Because I've tried a whole bunch of stuff and it's not working.
Right. Yeah. And I think it gives us a safety net too. I've been reading in Romans where, and there's just so many great passages in there, but, that God, he who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also graciously give us all things? Like,
All things.
all things. Yeah, that he graciously gives us what we need. And then, where it says, if God is for me, who can be against me? And that God works everything out for the good of those who love him. And I think when we kind of hang on to those things, there's room to just be like, well, this is hard and I'm working on it, but it's okay for me to fail because God's got my back. You
Right.
know?
And I think the I'm working on it part means I'm working on my relationship with God and my connection to things like the CSCs.
Right.
It's taking our mind off the problem because that's God's responsibility now, and focusing on our connection with him and, obeying his principles, whether that's the Sermon on the Mount stuff or the Ten Commandments or, but through his power, like, well, this is how I should live. Okay. But I mean, how is that going to solve this problem over here? And then God sorts it out somehow.
Right.
Or at least in our heart, maybe the problem shrinks, even though out in the world it's the same.
Right. That's one of the things I love about a growth mindset is that it's a heart issue rather than a circumstance solution.
Yeah.
And I think so often, we want a circumstance solution, but growth mindset is like, well, maybe the circumstances don't get any better, but maybe, you evaluate what did I do last time and how do I do it better this time? And then you try again. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah. I think a big example of this in my life is struggling with addictions. I feel like for the longest time, even after we got married, it was just like not really working. It was this like, well, I want it. And I tried stuff in high school, tried different things. And then there was a big trigger that was like, well, okay, I know this isn't working. I've known it for a while now. And now it gets serious. It's when we found out we were going to have children. And it was just like, so there's, this big rock is splashed into my world. And it's like, well, okay. And then it's like, well, then that thing that you just said, okay, God, well, how does this work? And then,
right.
It's like, well, maybe you should try counseling. Maybe you should try support groups. And because the problem isn't this addiction thing, it's where your heart is at. And,
right.
And you keep running around to fill up voids with stuff instead of with me. So, that growth mindset of like, well, if I really want to quit, when you just flush all your alcohol down the toilet, does that make you quit? It's other stuff.
Yeah. I mean, like we have talked about before on this show, that addiction is like a fire. You have the flames that are the actual addiction, the acting out. And then you have the inciting incident, which is, can be anything from your computer stops working today.
Sure. Any stressor. Yeah. Or
right.
a ritual. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Something like that. And then your coals, which is all the underneath stuff. And that, so often we try to deal with the flames or the inciting incident, the tinder, but we don't, until we actually deal with the coals, we're not going to see progress.
Yeah. And it's not even, everybody, I believe, has this stuff, and we need a growth mindset to deal with the littlest, tiniest little and thing that's such a minor little addiction or an attachment.
Right.
It needs to be dealt with. And that takes a growth mindset because sometimes it's just hard to give up, that Snickers bar that you always buy at the gas station on the way home from work. That's your little thing. Mm-hmm. And that could be a problem because you're depending on it. Yeah,
because it's a heart issue. It's not it's not the thing that's the problem in the first place.
Yeah. And so, anyway, where growth mindset and surrender comes in is, well, God, is there another way to solve this? I have no idea.
Right.
What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, and I think, when we surrender, we've talked before about how it's like you're getting into the slipstream. You're getting into that ocean current that takes you where you want to go faster and more easily. But I think, sometimes we forget that there's two parts to that. Like there's our part, which is actually getting in there, or, if it's a road and God says, walk this road, we have to actually do the walking.
Yeah.
Even regardless of whether the road goes up or down or twists or turns. I mean, we know it's going to get us where we're supposed to go because, the Lord's faithful. Like I was just saying in those verses in Romans, he works everything out for the good of those who love him. He's fighting for us.
Yeah.
He will graciously give us all things. Like he's taking care of us in this life. But we still have to do the work. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think growth mindset is so critical.
Definitely. Well, and it's tricky because the work's not work extra hard on becoming successful or whatever. The work is to stay connected with God and to be obedient, to put aside our will and to surrender to his. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's what we're supposed to use our free will for, is to surrender our free will to God.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're right. That leads us to those green pastures and abundance and spacious places. And that's where we want to be. I mean, that's what our heart's yearning for. And that's why we're grabbing Snickers bars every day.
Exactly. Well, and that's why we're so focused on trying to fix whatever the stress circumstances in the first place.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that we're like, I can't do this. And it's so frustrating.
Well, and that's often sometimes what keeps us from trying something new is because we're so like, well, I'm just going to fix this problem. And for 10 years, we just are trying to fix it the same way and it never gets fixed. But it's like, well, no, I'm in here. I'm working hard. And like you're working up a big old sweat.
It kind of reminds me of our computer. About a year ago, the graphics card went out on our 2011 MacBook, which for those of you who are familiar with computers, that's pretty normal. For that particular MacBook, Apple had actually recalled it, but we weren't aware of that fact. So by the time we had a problem with it, the recall was over. We discovered after doing some research that one way to fix it is to reflow the graphics card by taking it apart and baking the graphics card and the motherboard, because the graphics card is affixed to the motherboard. And so the
first time we tried it though was so like, what? And we did it. We threw it in the oven.
Yep.
And it actually
toaster
worked.
Oven. Slightly terrifying.
Yeah.
Our computer at this point is, the
it's
problem is
limping.
not fixed because we need to replace the graphics card and the motherboard, which is more than we want to spend on that particular computer. So we're just, every time the graphics card starts being bad again, we go ahead and bake it again.
So what does it make you wonder about the growth mindset? Like, should we not be...
No, it just reminds me, I think sometimes that's what we do. We just do the bare minimum to fix the problem without actually fixing the problem. We're just treating the symptoms over and over again without really what's the underlying issue.
Because that seems like the quickest way to a satisfactory solution, because it's like, well, I know how to do this, but it could actually be not a shortcut at all.
Right. And just like, baking the MacBook, I don't know how long it takes. It probably takes me close to an hour to take the computer apart, bake it, put it back together, redo the thermal paste, all that junk. And so I do that every 5 or 6 weeks or something. And whereas if we just bought a different computer or, bought a new motherboard, whatever, then we wouldn't have to deal with it. That would fix the problem long term. Okay. But I think it's easy to get caught in the short term solutions.
Well, that's right. That's where we're at with that. I mean, we haven't replaced it. Mm-hmm. So we're right there. We're working on this stuff. We're trying to open our mind and see the other way and ask God what to do.
Right.
It's very difficult.
Yes.
But very exciting too, because we know enough about it to see the wisdom in the growth mindset stuff.
Totally.
And God's done other things in our life that has been like, whoa, really? Wow. There's so much abundance here.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, hopefully that gives us all something to think about. Maybe think about where you're baking your computer. Where are you just doing the short-term solution when really what you need is a long-term fix? We love you guys, and we're praying for you. Thanks to everybody that's been sharing the show and listening to the show. We really appreciate it. If you have found this podcast helpful, please do continue to share it If you haven't signed up for our email list, go ahead and do that. Then you won't miss out on any episodes. Pick whether you're going to have an awesome day today, as always, because you have a choice about how you approach the day. And come back tomorrow, and we'll keep talking about growth mindset and being centered and how those are all connected.
That's right. We'll see you guys later.
Bye.